right. So we got the three most important things. We got Filippo here. We're, we're hooked up to Facebook and recording. So I say we jump into it again. Again, my apologies for the delay here, but we got everything away. So first of all, I'm here today with the people who've everybody's already spoken. Rennie, say hi to everyone. Thank you for making this happen again. Stacy, thanks for bringing your light as always. There it is. And Filippo, thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving us a little scare this morning, getting our energy up today when we weren't sure you were going to come. So that got everything moving. Always forgiven. So Filippo is, and I'm Dave Gold, by the way. Filippo is someone we met, I don't know, a few months ago. One of our former people, Haley, found you and said, this is someone you got to meet. And we met, and it was kind of love at first sight all the way around with your wife, what you're doing, and with my then partner, Justin and Haley. Um, and Filippo has put together a program that I was trying to describe to my wife today, and I couldn't do it because it's just too big and too brilliant. But essentially what he's come up with is an algorithm that helps you not only maximize your productivity, but maximize it in a way that also feeds your soul and is in line with your soul. Does that sound about right? It's just a short.
Great. No, it sounds great. It's it's interesting because when I ask me what do you do in one line, it's very hard to explain, right? You don't want to sound like. So I know exactly. It must have been hard for you to explain to your wife. Exactly.
Well, you helped me you actually fed me that line beforehand, so I didn't exactly make it up. So I got to give you some of the credit for it. So Filippo, talk first. I want you to talk first, just so people get an idea of what you've created, just so they understand what format you and your wife's genius has taken. And then I want to go back and talk about how we got into that, and then we'll walk through it. And hopefully we'll have time for you, because when you showed me everything Monday, when you actually walked me through it, it's the first real aha moment I have of seeing how you were able to connect this beautiful mission you have of helping people to have maximum productivity in a way that actually aligns with how they're feeling and what's being called for in the moment, and bringing that down to something that you can actually punch in on a keyboard. So I want to spend time with that as well. So first of all, tell us what you've created, and then let's talk about the creation myth.
Sure. The idea was, I've always been sort of fascinated by the sort of Eastern and Western philosophies, and there are some great teachings out there. The problem is that it's hard to implement them, throughout our day. And so we thought, what if we could create let's say, a management system, a personal management system to allow us to get on with our day. So, help us be productive, but at the same time, kind of bring all these great teachings in the flow of our day so that we can be, productive, but also feel fulfilled and kind of expand ourselves so that we can kind of win personally and professionally. And so we sort of looked at the market and said, what would we want to use, right? And we kind of looked at the productivity tools out there, and they're good, but they're really unhumane. They don't take in consideration how we feel, what's going on inside us. So ultimately, that impacts our ability to be productive and effective, because obviously emotions are a great enabler, but they can also disenable us. So that was the first problem. And then the other thing that we looked at is there are wonderful well-being apps out there. The problem is they don't really come into the flow of our days when we most need them. So even though they're great, they somehow feel disjointed. So we were like, what if we could kind of bring the best of both worlds? So kind of create an interface that looks like a productivity tool, let's say, or a platform, but then kind of bring all these elements to kind of enhance and enrich the experience so that you can thrive on a personal and professional level. And so what we've done is we kind of created this personal management system inspired by actually the neuroscience of productivity and well-being. And the whole goal is to kind of help professionals, better manage themselves in their days. And one of the things is prioritization, which is actually one of the most taxing activities for our brain. So based on how you're feeling, the complexity of your tasks, the algorithm, it's called the one-click schedule optimizer, prioritizes your day in the most effective way, schedules in, well-being hacks throughout the day so you can keep your energy levels and check throughout the day. So more than time management is energy management, because I think that's ultimately what we're made of. And then the idea is obviously to help you also find a healthier work-life balance. So it kind of helps you identify what meaningful activities could you do for your personal fulfillment so that you can kind of win in both areas, and ultimately look at your day as an opportunity to expand, to grow, and to be at your best. That would be, let's say, the short description of what.
Let me come in here just to summarize some of this, that basically you have productivity tools that help you kind of manage and organize your day, right?
Yeah.
And then you have well-being stuff that says, hey, you should be here's something that'll help you feel better about yourself and do better about your life. And your mission was to somehow blend those together in some way so that you would not only be productive, but that actually on a daily basis, what you were doing would be, as you said, feeding your soul.
Feeding your soul, yeah. And then the idea of creating a journey around that. So not just like some fragmented experience, but how does your day evolve, and kind of capturing through data, we understand who you are and where you're going so that we can kind of support you. And the whole idea is to kind of create, as a result of your interactions with the system, almost as the vision, like almost your digital passport of your inner world. And how can your inner world mold your outer world? So that's kind of the idea. And we thought maybe by bringing a productivity tool, which is something people can relate to because we all use them, but kind of bringing this other aspect that is actually personalized to what we're actually doing throughout our day. That's kind of, yes, the idea of combining the two worlds, I'd say.
So let me give you a real life example that you can chew on a little bit and help people. I'm gonna take my own morning because I thought of you this morning. So Julie and I do a meditation with Panache Desai every morning from like 9 to 9:25, and I come out, and I'm grounded, I'm refreshed, I'm creative, and I'm sitting there. I get my computer and I say, what do I do now? Okay, is this a time for me to just go back and meditate for a half hour? Should I take this and be creative and work on something that maybe I've been stuck on, kind of like a writer's block kind of thing? Should I get the 3 things that I most don't want to do in my day out of the way now when I feel well? So kind of help me conceptualize that how you conceptualize that opportunity, and then how your productivity system could help me navigate that.
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest with you, there is different stages. The whole idea is eventually to take you through a little bit of an assessment when you first start. So I think the problem is a lot of times myself too, if we just look at our day, then we kind of don't really have a bigger sense of purpose. So if we can kind of understand what's important to us on a high level, and kind of on a personal and professional level, and kind of understand how we operate, then what the system can do eventually is start understanding, okay, what are the sort of general assumptions of how you operate? And then throughout that, based on that assessment, I can start making suggestions by just reminding you of what's really important to you. And the idea is also to kind of help you check in with yourself. So if you're not feeling great, for example, or unclear, then what the system will do, it can, if you're not feeling great, it'll probably tell you, suggest you to do maybe something for your own well-being so you can regain your focus. But essentially, if you do already know what you want to do or what you have to do for the day, then the question is, how do you prioritize that? And so our one-click schedule optimizer enables you to raise all those activities. And then based on how you're feeling and the complexity of your day, it sort of helps you prioritize it so that you kind of have a more effective and efficient and energy sort of friendly way of actually tackling your day.
Okay, can I jump in a little bit? So there's this thing, right? Okay, so like I'm in grad school and I have like a couple jobs, and there's stuff that I like want to do, and there's stuff that I need to do. And so like in evaluating that, like I'm sitting down and I'm reading. Just like I'll just give you my example from this morning. Like I'm sitting down and I'm reading a really interesting book. And I know I have to read it because I have to write this paper on it that's due tomorrow. So I'm like doing that. And the whole time I'm like so excited about this other project that I get to do for this other class. And I can't stop thinking about that. And like, so in my brain, I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, I should do that. I have to do that. And I'm feeling so inspired about this other project that, I'm going to start and it's due or whatever, like it's due eventually. And so I just took like 2 minutes and I emailed my professor and I was like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. What do you think about that? But like, here's the rub. Should I be buckling down, focusing on the book I need to read, that's the paper that's due tomorrow, or should I be like, oh my God, I'm so inspired right now, so I should go do that and like focus on that and like write my whatever it is for this thing that I'm inspired by? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. I know exactly how it feels. Well, I think it's interesting because you have a lot of techniques where you kind of rate your level of urgency. So I think at the end of the day, if it's something that has a really sharp deadline, sometimes, we can look at it as an opportunity to build resilience when we actually don't want to do stuff that we kind of need to do. And hey, sometimes that's how life is. But I think a lot of the times is also tapping into our energy. And here it's about sort of developing greater self-awareness, generally as a concept of saying, you know what, if I'm on a high and like I'm feeling good, and actually doing something that inspires me, which might be actually challenging in some way, and I feel energized, I'd personally go for that. But again, it's such a personal thing. It depends how much of a deadline the other thing is. I mean, if it's 10 o'clock in the morning and you have to do it by 12, then probably it's about tapping into your inner motivation. And so one of the things that I like to do is kind of this concept of linking. So when you have an aim and you have something that it's, kind of demoralizing or demotivating, one of the best ways to kind of build resilience is to link, how's what I'm going to do now, even though if it's uninspiring, going to get me closer to my aim. Because, even if something is not that inspiring, it probably, if you change your inner narrative, it can kind of give you the extra push that kind of helps you interact with that activity in a more meaningful way. And then you actually see it as serving you rather than disheartening you, if that makes sense. And that's kind of the idea of one of the 4 pillars of well-being when we look at the science of well-being is outlook. How do we look at our lives? And so how can we look at our activities, even the ones that, if I have to do finance, which is not something I like, that actually gives me an opportunity to maybe connect with investors who can help me make my business a reality. And so all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's important, So I think it's a lot about narrative, which is ultimately how it impacts our inner levels of energy and motivation.
So how, and I don't know if maybe in a minute, could you actually show us your program? Would that work or not? I didn't let you know we might be doing that. So if that's not possible, that's fine.
Well, but the product is not fully ready yet. We've gone through some changes, and it will be out in end of the month, December. But I can show you some parts if that's.
Yeah, I think it is, and I think it should show it because what I think is I know my own reaction when I was first hearing this and thinking about the people that are watching and listening, is that like there's so many variables. It's like you say, it's like, okay, what's my this isn't happening in a vacuum. It's like, what's my life about? So how does, whether Stacy does the paper or goes, on a feud with these brilliant thoughts that are coming, what she's trying to accomplish in life. And then you get down to the very practical parts of, okay, what are my priorities for the day? And then you have, how am I feeling today? It's 10 o'clock in the morning. Is that a good time or a bad time? So what I can't imagine, I don't know what the magic is and what the juju is, but how I know you've come up like with an algorithm to take those different factors and help us make those decisions. And I think maybe to show us the actual product itself would help people understand how you do that.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, the one thing that we're working on is the personality assessment and the kind of goal setting part, because that kind of brings it all together. Because if you just look at your day, I'm going to show you how the product looks, but this is based just assuming that you know what you have to do today. But of course, once we improve the algorithm and bring a personalization element based on your assessment, then we can bring that part too, which is exactly what you were saying. So I'm going to go and give you just a quick. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Very good.
Wow, beautiful.
Okay. So let's say this is a demonstration of how the product would look. Right. So the idea is it's a web application for the time being. So, we incentivize you to check in with yourself to start your day because, having a morning routine, personally for me, it's the, win the day, win the morning, win the day. So the idea is to sort of come in and check in. First thing we ask you is, how are you feeling about your day ahead? And here what we want to ask you is in a simple way to, identify your energy levels and your emotional levels. So let's say maybe I'm not feeling that great for some reason, which is fine, no judgment here. And what this does, it helps us understand how you're feeling about your day and how we can best help. And then of course it helps you eventually through our analytics to kind of keep track and eventually pick up some patterns on your day.
And just back to that for 1 second, Filippo, because I just want people to see it's like a 4 quadrant. It's how you're feeling and how your energy is. So that's where you're placing yourself on this matrix.
Yes.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
And then, so once you've checked in, then the way it looks, at least for the time being, is just like another, task management, kind of call it calendar element to it, where you can just, raise activities, you have your deadlines, the typical stuff. So if you wanted to raise an activity, let's say call with Jason, what we ask you often is like how inspiring and difficult that is, because that helps you check in with yourself, but also it helps our algorithm to kind of understand how you operate. And so what that does, then it gives you feedback to understand how inspiring and difficult your day is looking. And that's the whole concept of continuously giving you feedback so you can kind of understand and make your own decisions, because we don't want to make decisions for you. We want to be, of support, but we don't want to take away the decision making. Otherwise, that's not really empowerment, at least in our view. So it's a product where you can basically raise activities and many. I'm going to show you just a quick one. This is if you want to detail things a little more. So you can say I have to do monthly report for Coca-Cola. You can put tags. This is not all mandatory, but if you want to put more details, again, how inspiring and difficult that is. If you want to set reminders or you have a flexible time, you can do that. Set reminders. This is not mandatory, but is in case you want to be more detailed. And then the idea is you can drag and drop other activities. So let's say this is how my day looks today and I'm ready to go. And what I do is I click the schedule optimizer. And what the system does now, it kind of finds the most optimum way to rearrange my schedule based on how I'm feeling and the complexity of my activities. And what it does is it turns a to-do list into a time-boxed calendar, basically. Because one of the problems with to-do lists is that they're not time-bound. And so studies show we're terrible at predicting how long it takes us to actually complete our tasks. And so by time-boxing them and actually putting a set time, you become a lot more productive. And so the idea here is, other than prioritizing, also then putting in little well-being hacks, breaks to really kind of help you manage yourself, your energy and your well-being throughout the day, but ultimately also to be more productive. So for example, if you have a monthly report with Coca-Cola for 2 hours, your brain not only does its best work for an hour, so then we provide you with little recharge breaks. So it's really a way of inner sustainability. We talk a lot about outer sustainability, and the goal here is to bring inner sustainability. And then based on your day, our system recommends you these kind of with little hearts. These are wish lists, and I'll show you how that works. But these basically are all the activities you can raise for your personal fulfillment. And our goal is then to help you find the optimum time in the day to complete them so you can kind of have this win-win work-life balance. So let's say in this case, I've been suggested yoga and meditation, I accept. So then I'm good to go. And so we're playing around with design here to help you look at your day as kind of, climbing a mountain. And and then, you get on with your day, and then that's where the sort of first support comes into play. This is the wish list. So here is where you can raise all the activities that you wish to do for your personal fulfillment. And so we help you identify the areas of your life. So for example, if I want to, read a book and I put it on learning or do a particular course, and then what I can do is I can tell the system when it's on, if I want to be reminded. So if the system needs to actually recommend it to me, or if I want to say off, then the system knows that I shouldn't be bothered with that. And so you can see different parts of my life. And so let's say I want to, raise an activity for my well-being. I can say I'd love to meditate. I can say, again, I can be as precise as I want. It's not necessary how often I want to do it, duration. Now, this is very important. What part of me am I nurturing? Because this kind of helps you look at your day as a way to really nurture yourself, and also the way you interact with your activities, just not as to do this, but as a way to enrich yourself. And the idea is that if we kind of see that you're lacking a bit of balance on looking after, let's say, your mind, your heart, or your body, the whole idea is to bring balance in that too, right? So it's really looking at your day holistically. And so that's kind of a bit the product. And then throughout the day, what happens is, an example, let's say you have an important call, you're a bit stressed, and I say, you know what, it's time to take a recharge break because you've been working hard. So it's like, okay, let's do that. And here we just give you a little exercise, which is a little breathing exercise from pranayama. So it's a simple breathing exercise to help you recharge. And the idea is to always give you a little insight from a scientific point of view of why this is important, other than for your own, well-being and potentially even spirituality. So the idea is to kind of have this interaction throughout the day. If you want, then you can reflect on your activity. That's entirely up to you. The nice thing about it is that if you reflect, let's say I didn't do so well, I can identify what didn't work so well. And what that does is it tells the system, it starts learning, so that then it can nudge you next time you have something similar to remind you of actually keeping those best intentions. Because for me, one of the problems with journaling is that I write all these things and I forget them. So I want something that comes back from my own efforts that actually helps me. So it kind of becomes, you become your own feedback loop in some ways. And then the system starts learning more and more. So the way it would look is that next time you have an activity, for example, communicate more effectively if that's something you identified in the past with a similar activity. And so the idea is to kind of, nudge you if you want to reflect and write actually how will I bring out my best self during the activity. I can write some notes. Otherwise, I'm just happy to have that heads up and kind of tackle my next activity. And so, yeah, the idea is to really kind of plunge through the day, and then we encourage you to check in to sort of see how you're feeling. And then if we see that your day maybe is not going as well or you're a bit low on energy, we may recommend you as well to maybe consider another activity for your wish list, because the worst thing is like kind of wanting to do something and then not having the energy for it. So the idea is to maybe recommend you something else that can be as useful and as meaningful for you, that perhaps requires less energy, so that you can still win despite, how you're feeling. And so that's the idea of kind of giving you the support so you can climb the mountain by the end of the day. And then just lastly, some analytics so you can track, your energy, your emotion waves, how you're doing at fulfilling, the different areas of your life on the wish list, where you're actually having most success and where perhaps you haven't been able to stick to your goals. And so again, you can tell to the system, you know what, I don't want to be reminded of painting, or you know what, yoga is actually important. I've only done it once out of 3 times. So I want the system to actually start, so that actually prioritizes the algorithm as a focus point. And yeah, so, it goes on, but this is kind of a bit of a taste of the product. Here are some of the reflections based on the little smileys. So it helps you understand where you're doing best and where you have your biggest opportunity for growth.
Okay. So Filippo, you can take it off the screen. So I want to, so Rudy and Stacy, am I the only one that thinks this is absolutely brilliant? And
Oh my God, no, it's like amazing. I want to be your practice client and I have like 17 questions.
Rudy, what do you think?
It might be indicative of my life right now.
I have questions too, but they're more kind of like questions about the impact this would have on a post-COVID world, where people right now are trying to find their productivity, but they're working from home and they're feeling less motivated. They're not meeting with their coworkers like they used to. And I hear a lot from people who say they can't even like get out of bed to go to work in the morning. They just end up working in bed. And how something like this could help maybe re-energize the workforce that's just feeling pretty low right now.
Great question.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're doing is so important for right now, right? Because we're all isolated in a way, and we don't get to have check-ins in the same way that we used to. And we're on our own. And what does that mean? Like, I'm my own worst critic, or some people let themselves off the easiest, right? So like, there's some accountability to this that's really beautiful and important, not just beautiful, not just like, oh, dreamy, but like, get yourself together, do your work,
And Filippo, I want to turn this back, because our listenership, our clientele are primarily entrepreneurs who are going through, so it's challenging. So you have to eat your own cooking here. I don't know if that phrase means anything to you in Italian.
Yeah.
So how are you applying this to your
Come on, Italians, they love to eat, they love to make food. If we're being like stereotypical, I mean,
but it seems
man,
that you're in
the Italians and their food.
that you're in, we'll go back to the cooking portion. That'll be the next one. We'll come and we'll do the cooking show the second hour. But the fact that, I mean, I know where you're at, you're creating a product, you're kind of there, you got all this stuff, you're under a tremendous amount of stress trying to prioritize. How has this helped you? How do you cook here?
So it's very interesting, because one of the good things, I guess, is that I'm testing it myself, on how it can help me, and actually, I've shown it to a lot of psychologists, a lot of coaches, and it's been great to get the feedback. And I'll be honest with you, just at the beginning, of what we want to actually build. So there is a long way to go, at least to the vision that we have. But one of the things that hasn't transpired from this product, and we're actually adding it, is that initial assessment. Because what happens is, if you just look at your day, you can get lost. Whereas if you kind of have some reference points, so if you set like a monthly goal or a weekly goal, and that kind of becomes by default on your schedule, Like, it's kind of, that's what you need to do today. You know, it's not like, oh, should I do? Then of course you can play with how you feel. But if you already have kind of a structure, I found that for me, that would help a lot. And so now we're talking about with some psychologists to do kind of a mix of personality test with like kind of goal setting assessment, so that, you know, by having that initial assessment, the system already knows kind of where you want to go and what you kind of need to focus on and who you are a bit as a personality, so they can guide you even more. So you don't arrive there and like, okay, what am I going to do today? If that makes sense.
That makes so much sense to me. So I have a couple things that I'm curious about if you're interested in talking about it, as far as day mapping. So there's this concept of like eat the frog, which I'm vegetarian, so I don't eat frogs. But do you know that? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Like do the hardest thing first. Like whatever it is, that's like the hardest thing. Eat the frog. And so like you start your day and it releases hormones for you because you've got all the dopamine because you did the hardest thing, and then you feel successful, so you can do all the other things.
Yeah.
Or you just got the hardest thing out of the way. But then there's this other piece of it where it's like some people are their optimal selves in the morning. Some people are their optimal selves right in the afternoon. Some people evening, night, like so that piece of it. So I mean, I know you're not a psychologist, but like, where does that flow with like what you're doing? Are we always eating the frog, or we're never literally eating frogs? So we're all clear.
No.
You bring it around to cooking. You had to bring it around to the cooking again. That's great.
And being vegetarian. Or is it like who you are as your best self? This is what you do. So you need to do your best stuff after 5 p.m. Anyway, I'd love to hear that piece of it from you.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So obviously, the more you work on the system, the more the system knows you. So it becomes more personalized. The level of intelligence that it will have at the day one is not the same as in day 30. So that's the way it is. We've actually, the reason why we ask you to check in the morning is because we kind of understand, okay, are you willing to eat the frog right now? Is it really the best thing for you to do? Because sometimes you do eat the frog, but then you're done for the day. And so that's not really a long-term solution. So if you're feeling good, eat the frog. That's kind of the idea of what we say. If you're not feeling great, maybe let's get you to feel great so you can actually eat the frog. Most likely towards the beginning of the day rather than the end of the day. But then again, you know, as we will develop the product and get a deeper understanding of people's biorhythms, you know, there was a book that came out talking about, you know, kind of people energize in the morning, people energize at night. So it really depends on how people operate eventually to get that level of personalization. So, you know, it's a balance between being compassionate with yourself, but also resilient in the sense that, you know, you gotta build that sort of inner strength. But I think you can build it from coming from a place of peace rather than a place of war. And I think that for me is kind of what I'd love to install with this product is you can get over those obstacles, but you don't need to kill yourself. Just have a more harmonious relationship, be smarter about it. That's what I would say.
That is so beautiful, because I was going to ask you what gift you can give to people right now. What's the great, you know, from everything you've done in terms of where you are developmentally with your program, your product, your company, what is that greatest gift that you can give to, is wisdom that you want to share with people and you can give to people as you continue to develop a program they can buy?
In what sense?
I think you just did it. Just that, like, I think you said coming from a place of peace rather than coming from a place of war.
Yeah, for me, that's been the biggest, I would tell you the best concept of this. I've read a fascinating book that has changed my perception around productivity. It's called A Treatise on Efficacy. Actually, this is the biggest gift. It's funny because every time I speak to someone, I end up talking about this book. But it's just it's such an amazing thing. So basically what it is it talks about achieving goals, right? And it's a book basically written on an art war. And it talks about two philosophies. The Greek philosophy, which is what the Western world basically uses to achieve their goals, which is all about willpower, determination, hustle. You know, the problem with that approach is that you become very one-dimensional because you're just looking at your own little route, right? So you don't really conceive what's around you because you're so focused on your heroic effort. And then there's the Chinese way, which I find is infinitely more beautiful and also a bit more complex. But it's not about doing that. It's about rather becoming aware of all the forces at play and just positioning yourself so you can use those forces to carry you to the result. So it means that you're doing less effort and you're becoming a lot more harmonious, and you're not pushing, you're being carried. And it's such a beautiful way because it doesn't require your ego to get on the way. It's a lot more soft, gentle. It's such a beautiful thing. And this is a book on war. So it talks about how basically you need to continuously adapt because the events are continuously changing. So instead of being stuck in your own way, you become a lot more flexible, agile, light. And that allows you then to move, rather than push. And I thought that was an amazing concept.
And what's the name of the book again? Or the writing?
A treatise on efficacy.
Treatise on efficacy. So I didn't follow up with you before on this, and I apologize for that. But one of the things that you were, because I'm thinking there's people now who need what it is you're offering, whatever form it takes, right? And you mentioned that you were organizing some retreats or some other programs that people could connect directly with you in this wisdom right now.
Yeah, so I think, well, there's few things. So we're thinking of actually offering the product with some kind of coaching on the side. So for us, that's a great way, twofold. A, because we're able to help people, and also helps us understand what are their main issues when using a product like this or in their life, so we can kind of personalize further the experience. So anyone that kind of wants to give it a try, and more than happy to offer there some assistance / coaching to kind of support people in these difficult times. And then we kind of launching as a separate thing is called Leap to Your Best, and is a 2-day program. And it's designed really to kind of, give you, it's for individuals, like personalized, to really kind of give you that clarity to sort of take you and your business to hopefully the next level. So, because a lot of times I find that it's either business or personal. And then if you're an entrepreneur or self-employed, those two worlds, go hand in hand. So something I wish I had when I first started working with a coach. So yeah, it's just, a 2-day program where we kind of help people get more clarity and set an action plan for the next 3 to 6 months of, hopefully finding, something that works for them, not just to them,
So there's one more thing too, and I'm probably 5 steps ahead of myself here. I might need your product to slow down and figure out what I need to do next, because I'm just so excited about what it is and the opportunities of collaboration. Because you're at a interesting, and the nice thing about what we do in Heart Powered Ventures and the Commonwealth is we're just honest about where we are. So it's not like, hey, I got the product, give me a credit card. I mean, you're exactly where you are, and we're very honest and authentic about it. So one is, I want to invite people to participate in the co-creation of this in a way that doesn't bury you, right?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
And I think, so what I would like to do, and Rennie, you can tell me if this is possible, I would like to have some section of on a Facebook site where people can interact with, where we can interact with you, offer suggestions. And I mean, to me, like, I want to help you on a marketing standpoint and help product, people could say, hey, I want to help with this, I want to do that, or I want to take your program, but whatever, giving people a way to immediately access your wisdom and help influence the product in a way that, we all feel invested in it. So if you're all right with that, and Rennie, we could do that, I would like to post something up on our site for that. Does that work for both of you? Yep.
Yeah, we can take this offline, but I can work with Filippo to get some information that we could use to put online and, get the conversation going.
Cool. And then I'd like to make him, so that he'd be able to comment back and forth. So I think that's really important. And I would put out kind of this is like an open audition right now, and I don't want to bury you again. You can just filter through them. But I think whatever people can offer in terms of whatever it is to help co-create this, whether it's just an idea or say, hey, I know someone you should talk to, or I know some artificial intelligence, whatever it is, but I do want to kind of encourage people to be able to come in and do that. And also that would give people an opportunity to sign up for some of your programs as well. Because I just think we've got something so great here, and I've watched you, I watched you develop, and I want to make sure it comes to fruition, and that you don't have to wait till it comes to fruition to begin to get benefit out of, the genius and the heart you put into this.
No, and I think my dream has always been, to kind of co-create it, because at the end of the day, it's a human product, and I know as much as I know, but you know as much as you know, as in, like, we're all individuals that are different. And that's why also, with the pricing, we wanted to kind of go donation based, where you basically pay for the value you get. And because we want to move beyond, like, that sometimes when there is this transactional thing, especially with tech products, it can feel, well, what are you doing with my data? Or are you using this for my best interest? Whereas I think, in the world, and obviously you guys are doing this, it should be about win-wins. And so we want to reflect that even in our pricing model, so that people can actually be inspired to contribute, collaborate. And actually, one of the things that we're doing as a feature is on the wish list is to allow people to share their wish list so they can go on missions together. So to kind of create that co-accountability of, kind of motivating each other, so that it doesn't feel such a lonely ride either, right? It's so important to surround yourself with people that support you and make you better.
And that's just a great lead into the last thing I want to talk about. Is
So beautiful, Filippo. So beautiful.
Filippo is going to be it will be our featured guest tomorrow in our Commonwealth group. And I mean, there's so much red meat here for the sharks. Sorry, my vegetarian friend over there, but there is so much stuff here that we're going to dig into. I don't even know where to start, but this is just beautiful up that line. And I think what you have here, Filippo. So anyway, I'd invite people again to, if you'd like a guest pass for tomorrow's meeting, we'll be up on the website. There's a way on our Facebook site, rather, where you can get that. And our website is coming soon. Rennie's slaving away day and night, and we should have a real website soon. Thank you for that. And Stacy, again, thank you for the way you've been helping to shepherd the group and bring everybody along with us. So I want to acknowledge and recognize and show my appreciation to both of you. And what you're doing is, it's beautiful work, and it's a movement. It really is. It's like a movement, and it's coming into product form. And we want to support you in every way we can to bring what you've done and your particular genius and heart to the world. So thank you for all of that. There'll be more information up on our Facebook site about how people can communicate and kind of participate. I don't know what it is. We're making this up as we go along. Again, if you want to be Commonwealth group, that's great as well. And Filippo, if people want to connect with you directly for whatever reason, what's the best way to make that happen?
Well, you can go on, actually you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's Filippo di Lenardo. As if.
I just love you to say that.
I don't know how else to pronounce my name. It is what it is. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I tend to also write for blogs about, well-being, productivity. So I tend to post regularly too. That would probably be the easiest way. Otherwise, the website, essentia.com, written with a 3 instead of an E. And I think companies of the future are not going to be companies. I think we need to move beyond that. I like the idea of movement, of something, there's another beautiful book called New Power, and it talks about how basically great companies are moving from a, bottom-up approach in terms of getting people involved rather than dictating how things do. It's so much more inspiring,
Carolyn Rhodes talked about that recently in one of our Commonwealth groups too. Like, you can't just have top-down models, and she does say it is important for racial equity and inclusion to have representation at the top. But if you're only looking at it from leadership, then you're not going to get it.
Exactly.
So this is beautiful. Anyway, I got so many ideas. We'll go on forever. I think this is like open source technology. There's an open source nature to this. I don't know exactly what that is, but I sense that. And
we would love to. Yes, we would love to do the open, the algorithm, right? Because then if people can kind of contribute with the algorithm, then it's not biased by, I think it should be like that.
Yeah, I think we hit on something. So we'll figure out how to make, that's part of what we do in Commonwealth. We figure out how to help people connect with what they do. Yeah. All right, so I just want to thank you again and stay on after we go off, because I know that we want to have a little bit more conversation, and we'll also see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, again.
you.